So after Anthropic's last major update, which was managed agents that we covered in the last video, came out another, which is of course called routines. And in my eyes, honestly, this is the final nail in the coffin when it comes down to our traditional ways of automating things, such as, these low-code, no-code tools that have been going on for a couple of years strong. And if you couldn't already tell by the name of their new functionality, routines, it actually completely removes the need to chat with your entire agent workflows, hence why you can set them on some kind of schedule. And this video is for the point of me showing you exactly how you're going to set up your routines, to whether they be kicked off from your own data on a scheduled basis each and every Monday on 9 a.m. and so on. But before even that, who am I, why do I even matter? My name's Adrian. I've helped hundreds of businesses implement AI within their tool stacks and or just organizations generally, generated millions of dollars in that regard. But without any further ado and without tooting my own horn, let's just jump into the gist and take it without any kind of interruptions. So first and foremost, how do you navigate to this? You go off to claude.ai/code/routines. For this, you do need to be logged in some form of Claude Code. You need to have a subscription. Once you're down here, well, everything starts off nicely with this interface. You're going to be met with this sidebar where you have like a new session, routines, customize, which just manages or lets you pick different types of toolings that Claude currently has, and so on. Main point being this routines one. Over here, you can draft a couple of routines before building them. And of course, you have some starts from templates. Now, the templates might be a bit confusing because you see like system health check or, issue triage. And this is because Claude routines have initially been set out to basically help developers when they're currently developing an app. If an error pops up, then this triggers and then a certain workflow does something to let them know to stop production and so on. But of course, we're not the tech geeks. We're about to figure out, how this can be done to business. So how can you actually apply this to business? Well, let's look at a couple of use cases here. So if you click on the new routine, right? You're going to pop up this window where, of course, you can give a name to this new Claude routine. You can give it instructions, specifically what you want it to do. You can select a trigger based off of what it's going to be running on. So what does that even mean? Say, for example, you can see here, so schedule, run on a recurring cron schedule or once at a future time, meaning that you can quite literally give it something similar as if you were in an NN. You just clicked on schedule trigger. Okay, I want this to run every time at 9 a.m. and so on. Outside of that, you have the GitHub event. This requires you to actually set up a repository and then connect to it. Then, of course, you can do it through a webhook event. And you have an API, which means triggering from your own code by sending a post request. That means that you can, send over a couple of lines of code through your application to this, and then it can trigger it. This is how we're going to be testing in this video, just for testing purposes. And of course, you have your connectors. So let's say, for example, if you want to create some kind of, email inbox, reader that you want it to schedule and figure out all of the emails that are in your inbox, give you a quick summary of it every single Monday at 9 a.m. or every single day at 9 a.m. Here's where you're actually going to add that. So before even building out any kind of routine, you need to make sure that your connectors are, funnily enough, connected. So if you can see over here, if I jump in, since it's a demo account, I don't have any more connectors available. It's just Fathom. So how do you add this? You actually go off to your main Claude.ai. You go to /customize and /connectors. And over here, I can actually see if you click, on browse plugins, you can see tons of different connectors, whether it be Canva, Microsoft, Notion, everything and anything. For these purposes, we're just going to be picking Gmail. So navigate to Gmail, click connect. It's going to pop up this window. You just choose whatever account you want it to connect. Then it's going to say like, hey, we're going to be connecting, having access to everything. You just give it absolute access to everything or whatever what you want. But, I just pick it like that. Once that's in, it's going to say connected to Gmail. If you click on this, it's going to tell you exactly what it can do. So it can write and delete, and can read only. You can give it all sorts of access here. That's not even the main point. After you actually connected it, you can route back to these routines. Click on this, and you should be able to see a new connector, whether it be refreshing or in any way, shape, and form, getting it set up on there. So after a quick refresh, you have this new Gmail one or whichever one you added, and you can basically add it to this very specific Claude during each and every run or this routine. So for this case and scenario, we don't need a Fathom one. We can just use the Gmail. We can give it a name, I don't know, perhaps email summarizer for that regard. And then in instructions, this is where the magic actually happens, aka where you feed it. So first and foremost, you can pick your model over here. I don't think anything more than Sonnet is necessary, and you can even do it through their own hold to record, but we already know that for Windows purposes, we're just going to be pressing down Windows plus the H key, which is going to be popping this window up, which after you vigorously click through a couple of times to get your first input, It's actually going to be able to listen to you and output this. So without any further ado, let's, set something up. I want to set up this routine that's going to go through my entire inbox and let me know of any messages that I need to be aware of that are not automated and that are not of a promotional purpose. Say, for example, I would like to be notified if some client sent me a message, if a team member sent me a message, or if anyone in my private life sent over a message that I should know about, and I want a report based on that. Quite literally as simple as that. Of course, the more in depth you go, the more specific you are, the better it is going to be, just for demo purposes in that regard. And then we actually need to select the trigger. So how does that work? Well, I could realistically just click schedule, and then I can give it, it runs daily at 9 a.m. CST. Cool. But I couldn't really test that with you guys. So how am I actually going to be doing this? We're going to be triggering this manually and or via API. So I'm going to be, picking calling via API, and it's going to generate a token, which I can feed in through my app, quote unquote, which is just going to be Claude Code. That's going to be calling it. And after that, when I click create, since we actually gave it the API token, or we actually wanted it to call via API, it's going to generate this. Of course, keep this for your own internal sake. Don't share with anyone, because of course I'm going to have to delete this after the video. But of course, keep this in your environment or wherever you typically want it, and then just crash out with it. And it's going to be done. It's going to be generating this, and it's going to say no runs yet. Repeats, manual only, and then the API trigger is available now. You could theoretically trigger this via run now, or if you have an app, as said, you can just feed this key through the app, and then you're gonna get it. So let's test this baby out. Just click run now, and then it's going to start today at 14:47. So the only thing that I instructed it to do is basically to give me an overview on everything. So it's going to be doing its own thing and pretty much rolling out from there. Even if you go off and click that little run feature, it's going to say enable notifications, so you can get notified when tasks are complete, which is completely fine. I could have also hooked this up to, say, for example, Slack, or funnily enough, I can just tell it to email me on that regard, but I don't want this typically to go now. But you see over here, it basically started running just as, Claude Code within the console and or within any kind of IDE would. Basically initialize session, use two tools. I have a solid overview. Let me fetch the actual content of the threads. Let me read some Upwork messages, and so on and so on. And as you can see right over here, now naturally I of course anonymized this output, but effectively it gave me like an overview. So 11A, hi name, apologies, quick question, do you know if the meeting was recorded? Someone inquiring, I have a meeting tonight that I haven't responded to the invite yet, so pretty much need to get on that. We have another client on here, a couple of different clients. We have some kind of a team lead and internal product growth email that's basically going against some board and wider group update. We have another password that's been changed, and then we have some filtered out nodes like LinkedIn connections, LinkedIn weekly performance stats, platform verification codes, and whatever not, basically. Now, if you actually go back to the routines, you can actually check out the ones that you have created. And as you can see, email summarizer runs once, and you actually can go off to this calendar feature, which is right next to all, which is going to fill out basically, well, the calendar and how the days are going to go by. And of course, it's going to tell you what exactly is going to happen today, tomorrow, Friday, whatever types of dates ever in life, and what types of your routines are going to be running at what specific time over here, so I can have a clear overview. And of course, I just set one for tomorrow, and let me just test it out. Let's see if how useful that can be in that regard. Just kidding. I have in my other workspace an entirely filtered out routines, because I've basically converted every single N8N/make automation within this, because why wouldn't I? And actually tying on to that point, in the last video we created some similar kind of internal workflow for proposal generating that only worked based off of taking a call transcript, pasting it in, and then actually generating it. This was done through managed agents, and then it went off to ClickUp. It found a specific lead, and then it generated some kind of document that looks like this proposal within ClickUp itself. And then the team could do this as an internal tool instead of having to automatically do it. But with routines and with API calls and everything of this, we can fully automate this. How would we automate this? Well, we go on to new routine. Let's say, for example, this one is proposal gen. And then we essentially want this to be able to run on a trigger from my own code by sending a post request. Either that, or we just have a Fathom one. That is a Fathom connector. And if we actually go off to the customize, if we go to Fathom, we can actually see that it can find a person, it can search meetings, it can list meetings, it can get recording by URL. It can basically read everything and anything from our Fathom. So ideally, we just go back, and if we were to looking to just get any kind of insight into whenever a meeting gets finished that we want it to generate a proposal, we can certainly do so. So we just instructed, hey, I want this to effectively take transcripts from Fathom after a call has been finished, and then generate proposals based on that, and just output them for me. So super similar again, super just, just off the cuff, straight off the top of them. And you can do whatever you want with this. You can give it a document like the last one, basically from what it should be able to read. And you can choose, maybe perhaps you would want to trigger, maybe you would like for this to run once every single day at the end of the day. So you took like, I don't know, 10 sales calls this day, and you wanted to generate 10 different proposals at the end of the day. You can certainly run it on a schedule, and then it's going to run through the very last day's worth of proposals, and then it's generating everything for you. Of course, you can give it documents based off what it needs to work. You can give it behavior, some permissions, whatever it needs to be. For this case and scenario, we're just going to be adding, this API here. And then I'm just going to copy this, going to be using it. Pretty much done. And yeah, it's pretty much it. So now the next phase is actually providing some kind of transcript for this to be able to, run, so you can see what the output can look like. And now, how we're going to test this? Well, I'm just going to go to Claude Code over here, and I'm just going to tell it, hey, this is an API key I got from a Claude routine. I want you to trigger it for me, basically. And of course, for just giving it contents, and its essence is pretty much generating a proposal, yada, yada. And instead of actually pulling from an actual Fathom meeting, we're going to be pulling or pushing the data through just a random generated transcript, and then basically letting it work its own magic over there while it's actually setting it up. The main kind of key difference over here would be in terms of like N8 and 2 these workflows is that before you actually had to sit down and, for example, this what I've been showing through the entire video is like a big lead generation system which ran each and every single day or whatever type of cadence you would prefer. It actually went out to set some inputs, did some code where you can adjust like inputs on what you wanted. It's like, hey, I want to scrape X or Y type of people. Then it actually had to go out to the Appify actor. It had to combine all the in-betweens APIs, what actual code is going to run. And then it's going to perform some filtering, like does the lead have a website? Then it's performing some kind of code over here where it's cleaning up the domains, making sure that they can actually get fed into this tool because that's how that tool, corresponds, and all of these different types of code, edge cases and so on, and basically a whole lot of work essentially. And how this changes everything is you just give it a high level instruction in natural language, which would be, English or whatever language you would prefer. And then it actually, alongside with your connectors, once you set it up correctly, went out and did all these wonderful cool things, which it can even let you know of, like, hey, was this scheduled, was this manual, was this API, was this a webhook call, and basically do it off of some kind of cadence for you. So removing that technical step in between. So roughly, instead of me sitting down and actually utilizing 3 hours of my time to build something like this with edge cases, figuring out everything, it can just handle edge cases for you, and you don't have to do a single line of code. You can just let it effectively run. And here, as we can see, the Claude has been able to, chuck over just as for demo purposes. And over here, we just got a simple proposal, for freight operations automation for Northwind Logistics. And that was basically it. Give it an executive summary, proposed solution, scope of work, whatever now, basically. And you can stack and pile upon this now just for, a proof of concept. So this basically generated some next steps and so on. If you want to realistically for this to be able to say, for example, I don't know, message you on Slack. How do you do that? Where you just jump over into your, connectors, you go to browse plugins, you find the connector of actually Slack, you add it, and then you just tell that entire routine to say, hey, once the routine's done, aka when the proposal's created, just ping me on Slack and send over that proposal in a doc format or PDF format, and you're off to the races. Now, when it comes down to actually setting up webhooks, similar concept. So I went over here in the midst of, it generating, and I just changed the instructions. Now, how do you actually do that? Well, you go off to your routines, you find the one that you want, and you click this little pen icon, which manages or gives you a possibility to edit this. And then you just change it however you like, because effectively what this is doing, every time you do a new run with a routine, it's just pasting in this instruction to it on a high level, and you just have either via API or it's automatically going to trigger itself, and it's just going to be performing the same thing over and over and over again. Depends on how different types of environments you got set up, how much context you have for it, the more precise it's going to be. So I also tested like in terms of how much you can paste within here, you can go nuts. So the more context you give it, the better you are. Then how do you actually set up a webhook? Well, just tell it after a call has been finished through webhook and so on, and then actually call the service API. And then, funnily enough, within one of its own runs, so if I go over to this most recent one, you can see that it actually told me exactly what I needed to do. So it's like, hey, in order for this to work, it went ahead and generated a couple of Python scripts and told me, hey, so cool, you just need to run this and create an environment, which is the .env file filling with all your API keys, and then just, let me know when that's done, and then your API and or post webhook fathoms. You go into your fathom, you point the webhook there, and that's pretty much it. It quite literally gives you a step-by-step based on how you make sure that fathom sends your transcripts to this webhook, which it's going to catch and then work based off of that on triggers. So super straightforward. It's pretty much Claude Code along with a cron schedule, or cron just means on a specific timer, but on cloud. So you absolutely don't have to go ahead and download Claude Code or download, anti-gravity, all of these IDEs. You don't have to go in the console. You don't have to, scratch your head over how does Claude MD work? How do all of these agent command skills work? You just jump into routines, give it a rundown, say what you want it to do, tell it, hey, I want to set up a webhook which is going to be able to receive this data if you want it to go based off of that. If you want it to run on a scheduled basis, even better. That's just by default in there. So yeah. On a quick rundown, that was pretty much it. Really super neat functionality. Since we went over the managed agents, I didn't really have to speak much over this. It's just an extension to its own functionality. And the funny thing that you can also do in here is if you have your multiple different agents within, say, your own Claude like main subscription, if you already have a couple of managed agents, you can actually connect them to this by telling Claude routine, hey, I want you to run this on a scheduled time and already use a pre-existing agent to get the output, and then take that output, chuck it back to me, and so on and so on. Again, sky's the limit when it comes down to these workflows. You can really go nuts when it comes down to what you want to automate, how you want to automate it, proposal generation, team updates, inbox cleaners. You can assign your inbox, or you can sort them. I don't know, perhaps image generation as well. You can throw in there. It's like, hey, every 9 a.m. every single day, I want you to generate a couple of different creatives that we can split test based on reading them from my, Google Drive for, ad creatives. Everything and anything is on the line here. It depends on where you want to utilize it and how you can actually get the best bang for your buck, and where you can actually notice where you can automate things, which is, funnily enough, that's another little point that I need to make, but don't want to take up too much of your time here. In general, hope this brought the concept of these kind of cron scheduled runs, aka making sure that you can run this on a scheduled basis, closer to you guys, and in terms of like how you can automate anything and everything here in a super accessible way nowadays, instead of having to actually understand code. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If you liked the video, feel free to drop a like. If you didn't like it, that's also wonderful feedback for me in order to what I need to change here. If you had any other questions, feel free to drop any questions below. I'll get back to you as soon as humanly possible. Click all the notifications, bell notifications, subscribe, whatever is tooting the horn of nowadays these wonderful platforms that we're on. And outside of that, if you're a business owner, you like what I have to say, and in general, if you have any kind of project under your wing that you're currently taking on, feel free to schedule that call down below on the link. I'll be more than happy to give you an overview, give you my thoughts on your project, and in general, point you in the correct direction in that regard. And if you like what I have to say, potentially we can even work together longer term, and I'm more than confident that I can help you in that regard. And yeah, that was my pretty much one and only pitch of the video, with my sentence that always goes along with it. But yeah, happy to help in any way, shape, and form. You have a stellar rest of your day, and until next time, yeah, bye-bye.